Scene one, Apple, take one.
So we're going to do cold open. If we can drop the lights and play the Lesbian Western trailer, and then I will welcome you all afterwards.
I'll just Photoshop you into lines.
That would be so great.
Who are you?
Filmmakers, please do it. I wasn't leaving, I promise.
Here you were.
Who's that?
What?
There's someone there.
Some kind of tough guy, huh?
You're a stupid guy.
It's all her fault.
Just doing my cigarette.
What's wrong with you?
What's wrong with you?
Kids, I love you. Love me. Why don't you just leave me alone? You don't need her. Just me. Get away from me!
Good as we got back in here.
I have to go.
Thanks, everyone. All right, I might just leave this mic off. So, as you all know, I'm Shane Borza. Thank you for coming to this panel. I wanted to start off with that trailer because a lot of what's happened in my career has happened because of that film, which was not designed to be like the showcase film, which is something I recommend everyone have, but it accidentally became that. That was my kind of senior thesis film at film school. I did go to film school in Sydney, Australia. That's where I also went to Stunt Academy and got my start in the industry, not just learning what to do in practice, but putting it into practice actually on set. One of the things that was great about that was not only did it lead directly into my first feature as a writer-director, but it subsequently led me to be here. And the quick links of that is made that film in 2011, graduated from film school, redid the like student cut into more of like a finished cut in 2012. And in 2013, Amber, who's the hero in the black hat, said, you should submit that to AOF. It's the Action on Film Festival, and they love stunt and action movies. And I said, okay, I never heard of it. Submitted the film, walked into the theater the very first day, and a portion of the poster was on the Welcome to AOF banner. When I went to go get my festival pass, I said, hey, I'm Shane, I'm here with Lesbian Western, and from behind a curtain, I heard this commotion, and out came Del Weston, who I'd never met before, and was like, Lesbian Western, I love that movie! And that started the 10 years of us working together on feature films, and me becoming a part of his film festival, and writing for his magazine, and getting put in his book, The Top 100 Indie Filmmakers of All Time. All of that happened because of this film. So I wanted to start this off because, as Henry Rollins once said, every band has a great song. It's just a matter of if they ever get a chance to record it or if you ever hear it or not. some bands give up before that one great song is made. Some bands make that song and nobody hears it, but they all have the potential to have that one great song. Creators in general have that type of thing. Like, they have one great film, or they have one great script, and they have one great idea. And what they need sometimes is that accidental kind of synergistic thing to happen where they meet the right person, or somebody sees the thing, and they go, oh, you should do this. So Igor Breakenback, who's a really big stunt guy, I actually want to ask Zach if maybe they know each other professionally. Igor's a really big stunt guy in Sydney, Australia. He was the stunt coordinator and the fight choreographer for this film. And he was like, hey, I like you, you really know how to run production. You should work with me, because he's his own production company. And because of that, I went to his stunt academy, I worked at his UFC fight gym, and we worked on 3 features together. And while we were on one of the features, he said, you know, I had this idea for a film. And we were driving back and forth across Australia, sitting in the van for hours at a time, and he talked out this whole film, and I was like handwriting notes in a notebook. Went to stay with him at his house over Christmas, and we wrote up Turbines, which became my first feature as a writer-director. And that all happened because I started working with the stunt guy, because I was like, I want to make action movies. And that's what began me being more of like, oh, I'm a filmmaker. I went from film school, actually didn't finish film school. I left and said, hey, I'm going to do 3 feature films. Thanks for teaching me everything. But because Igor and I partnered, we were able to make a feature that neither one of us could have done on our own. And I was able to catapult myself from, I'm a film school kid, to, oh, I just made a feature film. And it's now out, and it has like representation, and it's worldwide on all the platforms. But again, that's all because I was able to make this.
Hey Shane?
Yes?
Can you actually do the microphone? Because I'm missing a couple of
Okay,
words
excellent.
sometimes from you. I don't want to miss it.
So that was just kind of a quick intro to why I started this off with this. I'm going to talk a little bit about myself and what we're going to talk about today. The concept is, instead of having a slideshow, we're having a trailer show. So in between some of the segments of what we're going to talk about, I'm going to show you some trailers to kind of move us through and use it as some teachable moments as well. I call myself a coach, a climber, and a creator. Sometimes I use that in different orders, but those are 3 different aspects of my life that I try to use as ways to impact each other. So quickly on the coaching, so I'm a master certified both life and mental health coach, which means I'm in the top 4% of coaches worldwide. I have my own coaching practice, and I work with people both as a coach, where I help people develop things on their own, or as a mentor, where I'm more of like the expert who's teaching people what to do. A lot of the wellness and the kind of mental shifts have helped me personally, especially when we're dealing things with like art, which sometimes takes years to make, or the imposter syndrome, or the doubt, or just the overall what have you. The creative aspect of me working in post, I've done 200 projects as an AD, which I don't AD anymore because it's way too much work. Writing scripts and all that stuff. The production aspect enables me to help other people streamline their productions. And I can put together books and courses and resources for people, because a lot of that stuff was hard won on my own. And I would find something and think back, oh, I wish 2 projects ago I had this. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about what I'm offering people later. And then finally, as an athlete, I've been predominantly a climber and skier my whole life. So quite often I'll say, I'm a mountain athlete, and people are like, well, I don't know what that means. So I climb up mountains and I ski down them. So I'm currently nationally ranked. I went to nationals the last 2 years and medaled in downhill skiing. And as a climber, I'm like doing big walls and things like that, like think El Cap and Half Dome, that type of climbing, where you're on the wall for like a week. And so the logistics and the difficulties and the training, the showing up and the practicing for athletics is very similar to the discipline of like showing up and practicing and putting in the work for content creation. And it doesn't matter if you're writing a blog or doing a web series or prepping yourself in pre-production. There's a lot of crossover from those disciplines. I found that if I can use analogies like that, like, oh, you're a runner. Okay, so just like you got to put the miles in order to be prepped for your race, you cannot just show up to day 1 of your shoot if you haven't shown up for all the pre-production. So what we're going to talk about today are those kind of like 3 buckets. Production, which is pre-production, production, and post. We're going to talk about the different roles, which especially a lot of indie people, you're the writer and director and producer. Or if you're rotating through, like on this project, I'm this role, and then I have to remind myself, I'm not that role on this project, this is a different project, I'm in a different role. How do I very easily segue from role to role or hat to hat? And then finally, we're going to use some of the wellness stuff that I do from coaching. So we're going to talk about all the different operating systems that we all have, which is basically head, heart, gut. So the head is the IQ, is the logic. That's like the call sheets and the scheduling and the budgeting and the organization. And then there's the heart, which is the EQ, that's the emotion, that's the creativity, that's the vision. And the gut is that deep knowing. It's like that intuition where you're just like, I just know. Like, well, how? Well, I just know. Like, how do you know you love them? I just know. So it's about getting all those online and having them all talk to themselves. You're basically the CEO of you. You have to have those different departments be giving you updates. And you, as the CEO of the company, have to go, okay, listen to shipping and receiving and all these different components. Now I'm going to make an informed choice. But if you're not talking to those different departments, you're just like stuck in your head all the time. That makes sense, but it might not feel good. So we're going to get a little into that later as well. So that's the overview. I'm going to have us play the Turbines trailer so that you can see that, since they just talked about it. And then when we get back, we're going to talk a little bit more about that thread of production a little deeper so that we can figure out how people, and everyone's good at something. Some people are good at pre-production. As an AD, I was really good at pre-production to production. And then I would hand it off and I would go into the next pre-production on the next project. So it wasn't until I worked at Deluxe for 10 years that I learned about post and delivery and exporting and how there's that like third leg. And then that's all I did for 10 years. And I was kind of like, oh, now I'm rusty on this. So it's about learning those different segments and figuring out how to have them work together. So Radomir, if we can drop the lights and have the Turbines trailer come on, and then I'll see you all again in a moment. So if you had quick eyes, you were able to see me in the trailer. I was the second police guy off to the side. So one of the things that's great about that film is, so we did Battlegrounds in November, which is a World War I trench warfare film, which I was part of the stunt team. And then we did Theater of the Dead in, or no, that was December. Theater of the Dead was January, and then we shot this in February. Theater of the Dead and Battleground, I was part of the stunt department. But Igor's basically the big stunt guy in Sydney, and his buddy, blanking his name, Warren, is the big stunt guy in Canberra. And all this is in Australia. And they have a big history of like, hey, I'm coordinating this film, I need you to be the safety officer and run the stunt team, and then the other guy will flip on the next production. So they're constantly switching hats and helping each other back and forth. And being a part of the different stunt teams and floating through the roles of like what you're doing kind of taught me how to be like, well, today I'm this role, and sometimes in the same shoot with the same crew, you're showing up as a different role the next day. This is very Aussie, to have a bunch of the mates come together and you just make stuff. When I first came to LA and I was working on things and I started getting bigger productions, then you're stuck in a department. I was literally on things where people were dropping chords and I'd start picking things up and following them. And then when we'd be like, are you in the grip department? You're like, no, like put that down. You're like, but I'm helping because you help your mates. So it was a big difference, and I very consciously chose, like, I want to stay in the indie world. Like, I like working on, there's 20 to 50 people, we're all a family. I did the first YouTube Red project. It was a 10-day shoot, there was 250 people. I was like, I've been here 10 days, there's people I don't know. And I was like, I don't want to work on that. I worked on a John Chu project, and there was like the same 20 people for the 2 weeks that we shot. And I was like, on the set with John Chu. And he's like, just call me John. I was like, director. And he's like, just call me. And I remember thinking, like, this is how I like production to feel. You're also much more a part of the different aspects to production. You're brought in early. And the John Chu project I was part of, the production, wardrobe, props department and all that. So we were doing set dressings. We were going in and doing wardrobe testing with the dance crew. This was the LXD project, which came out like 10 or 15 years ago. And that again taught me like, oh, there's all this prep before you show up. When you're a stunt person, you're doing choreography in the gym, either with actors or other stunt people. And they're just kind of like, here's the fights we have to do. They either have weapons or they don't. There's either wires or they're not. There's either hard falls or they're not. But it's basically just what's the choreography that we have to learn. And you're just wearing pads and like t-shirts and shorts. It's like going to sports practice. And you just show up for the game and everybody else has handled everything. When you're actually part of the production though, there's all these other things you have to coordinate so that when you get to set, the catering is there, camera department's there, the audio department's there, the actors are there, you know, the trailers or whatever. All that happens in pre-production. Quite often people will show up, and especially if they're early in their career, kind of young, which you could be old, but you're young production-wise, and they'll be like, oh, I forgot to do this. Well, now you don't have it. Or there's no option. Or we're gonna shoot on Thursday, and now there's a storm, so now we can shoot outside, so what do we do? Oh, I don't know, I haven't had to change on the fly. So some of this is experience, but some of it is learning from people who have experienced these things. Quick story about that. My first feature, I showed up, I was a grip. The second day, they were like the AD who comes from the theater world was floundering a little bit of being an AD on a film. So I was told to be that I was going to be the second to help her. And the third day, she didn't show up, and so I became the AD. So that's how I became an AD on a feature film. Richard Mikulak, who is the DP, is from Australia. This is where we shot. All these stories are from Australia. He came to Hollywood in the 80s. He shot Three Ninjas, I think it's called. It's like this 80s classic about three kids. Bunch of movies. He was here for like 10 or 15 years. And then he decided, I'm moving back to Australia. So I would sit on set with him, and he'd be like, let me tell you what's going to happen. They're going to come in, and they're going to be like, we need to do this. And I'm going to be like, you should just do it like this. And I'm like, no, 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 we can't because of reasons. And so we're going to do this, and because we're going to be behind. And then 5 hours from now, they're going to come back and be like, can you help us? And I'm like, yeah, you should do it like this, which is the same thing I said 5 hours ago. And they go, great, thank you. And he goes, but they can't hear it yet. And that's exactly what happened. Like, how did you know? And he's like, I made like 35 minutes. So sometimes we aren't able to hear this stuff. Sometimes we don't know this stuff. So every time you're on set, try to look for the lessons. And if you can, shift from wins and losses to wins and lessons. And sometimes they're hard-won lessons, and you're like, well, that was terrible, or that was super costly, or that caused the production to not work. That's really valuable to take with you and remember. So in the next production, you're like, okay, we're not going to do that again. We don't want a repeat of this. As one of my professors in college said, so can you be wrong as long as you're wrong in new and interesting ways? If you're just wrong the way everyone else is wrong, I'm like, I don't want to hear it. But if you're like, oh, I've never had anyone think, how did you end up there? Let's figure that out. That was interesting to him because he's never seen that perspective before. So sometimes you're going to get on set and have everyone be like, none of us know what to do. You can really take advantage of the decades or centuries worth of accumulated wisdom on a set. Even if there's 20 people, if everyone's been in the industry for 5 years, well, you have decades of experience there. And that's another reason why pre-production is so important. It's a lot cheaper to say, we're gonna get all the actors for a weekend in a community room, which we can get for $20, and we're gonna pay everyone the $100 or just lunch and parking and gas. And you're gonna work all this stuff out. Dale knows from the theater. And then when you get it on its legs on set, you figured it all out. And we all have iPhones, you can shoot reference, bring the DP in. It's a lot easier to have those 10 people than it is to be sitting around on set and be like, well, this 1 day shoot's now a 2 day shoot. Oh, but so-and-so's booked for something else, you're not gonna be here tomorrow. So what do we do? Hey everyone, sorry to stop the show, but we have to pay some bills around here. And to do that, I wanted to point out a couple things I have on offer at my site, shaneborza.com. If you scroll down to my courses, you can see I have both a content creator live class and a DIY version. These teach you everything you need to know from a production standpoint so you can either get a writing project done, an audio project, or a film project. Doesn't matter, it works for everyone. If you scroll down, you can see some of my clients and some of the testimonials people have left telling you how helpful this has been for them. So I hope you check that out. You can also go to my shop and you can see all that I have on offer to include coaching programs, audio stuff like soundtracks, film production stuff. I have filmmaker bundles, all types of things you might need to help you get your art out into the world. As you can see, I also have a number of books. They are all on Apple Books. So you can go to my site and get them directly, or you can go to Apple Books, put my name in, and then you can see all the books there. They are easily downloadable and you can read them on an iPad or something like that. There are coaching books here. There are poetry and photo books here. And I'm very excited. I just updated my Film Notes workbook and Film Notes book. They are expanded and updated 2023 editions. So please check those out if you want some extra stuff to help teach you production. And now back to the show. The more you can sit down with your department heads, the more you can say, what do you need to be the best X on set so that I can help you succeed, the better you're going to be when you get on set. And again, some of that was what was super helpful about doing things like turbines and all those other features, because we got a chance to experience what it's like to be in those different roles. It's like, oh, these are the problems that sound people have. I never knew that. Well, now I can have that in mind the next time I'm on set and go, this is what sound people are wondering and worrying about today. This is what the camera people are wondering and worrying about today. One of the things that's terrible with stunt people is they go, so we're shooting your scene in 20 minutes. You're like, great, everyone needs to warm up. We have to get ready. We're going to go over the choreography. We're going to put the pads on. We're going to do this stuff. And then they're like, sorry, we're having a delay, so it's going to be a little while. And you're like, okay. And then you sit down. And then they're like, you know what, we're pushing after lunch. You're like, fine. So then you eat. And then they're like, okay, you need to get ready. You're like, everyone just say, fuck. So then you warm up again, and you put the pads back on, and now you feel bloated, and you feel sluggish, you feel heavy. And then they're like, never mind. And that happens over and over and over. And then finally, at the end of the day, when you're tired, when you've been sitting in the sun all day, and you're drinking coffee all day, and you have to pee, that's when you're going to do the fight. And they're going to rush through everything. And you're not going to have enough time. I was joking exactly the other day, because it started off with the guy complaining and be like, we need to redo this because reasons. And the director's like, we're moving on. Yes?
It's called like a hurry up and wait.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So again, if you know ahead of time how to work with these departments, you can pull them in and they can say, hey, I read through the script, here's my notes, and you don't have to take them, but it's probably really helpful to hear them before you get on set. It's a little too late on the day when someone goes, I know you wanted to do this big stunt or this thing, but we can't because of this. Well, now it's a little like you're too invested. You don't have enough bandwidth emotionally sometimes to take this on and say, oh, I had 2 days to think about it, you're actually right. The other thing that was really helpful was while we were on production in Theater of the Dead, which is a zombie movie, I got to die as a zombie in a movie, I was very excited. We were in pre-production on turbines. So that's another thing to think about. In the indie world, quite often, you're jumping from production to production to production. I forget the director's name, Takashi Miike, I think, is a Japanese director, constantly putting out like 7 movies every 2 years or something. And one of the things that they do is they write in the morning, they direct during the day, and they edit at night. So they're in all 3 stages simultaneously on 3 different projects. And they said the reason that works so well for them is because they're constantly going, I don't know what to do with this scene. Well, I'm out of time, I'll go direct. And then by the time they come back tomorrow, they've shifted out that project and looked at 2 other projects, and they're always coming in with solutions. Because the solution was, oh, I figured this out in the edit, or I put this together. Oh, that inspires me of how to put the scene together tomorrow. Other people, they can't do it. It's, Christopher Nolan. I'm gonna make a movie every 5 years. I'm gonna spend years developing the script. I'm gonna spend years gallivanting around the world. Those are money problems. If you're an indie person, your problem is sometimes I just did 10 days on this short and I'm exhausted and I'm going to take a week or I'm going to have to work. Oh, now a month went by, I haven't worked on my script. I forgot where I was. I don't remember what the idea was that I had. So it's about figuring out how to, again, shift back and forth from these three different things and figure out how to link them together. And then the final thing is post, and as I mentioned, I worked at Deluxe for 10 years, and that's where I really learned about, and this, again, sometimes depends on money or connections or what have you. Sometimes you're doing exchanges, as Igor warranted. Like, hey, I need you to do this, and then I'll do this for you. Quite often it was just the honor system. Like, hey, remember I did the movie last year? Like, you better come down to camera. You're like, fine. But if you can start to put together, like, oh, I have a friend who makes music, great. Got to make sure you have your picture lock. You can't keep editing it once you hand it off to the color correction person, the sound mixer, the music person, because they're working off your edit. And if you change the edit, well, they have to redo all their stuff. So if you're doing everything yourself, it can be another switching of hat things. You want to screw yourself over here because then you're like, oh, I forgot, I'm still editing it. You gotta do picture lock, then you can hand this stuff out. And it's really helpful to sometimes think about that and say, is it more valuable for me to raise $5,000 and have somebody else color correct this so I don't lose my mind? Or is it better for me to be like, I don't have the money, I'll just spend 6 months like teaching myself painstakingly how to do color. Those are both okay, you just have to choose which is better. I hate doing color. I can do it, it's painstaking, I don't want to do it. I partner with a post house now, and I just go, well, I'll just wait a month and save up some money and go, here, and they'll hand me a feature done in 5 days. And I'm like, oh, it's so easy. It's worth it for me to work and pay someone to do a better job faster and easier, instead of saying, well, I have to spend 3 hours a night, every night, when I'm tired, doing this thing that I don't want to do. So we're going to get a little more into that when I talk about some of that health and wellness stuff. The more you can know, this is how I work and how I work best, that's how you can really facilitate having your project do really well and how you can interact and get the best out of every person. But if everybody's showing up frustrated and pissed off and they have no bandwidth, then either people are going to walk or you're going to get through the project and not work together again. And instead what we want to do is try and facilitate, not only moving through production easily, but moving production to production easily. Because again, sometimes you're going to be like, hey, I'm the director, I didn't know how to treat my crew well. Well, now I'm on the crew to the person who was on my crew, and now there's tons of friction. Because it is a small industry. And it doesn't matter how big the production is, at some point you're probably going to bump into each other. And a lot of what we have is the social proof. And if somebody's like, oh, they're amazing to work with, that's going to be a really easy open door. But if someone goes, oh, you don't want to work with so-and-so, that door, they may not even answer it. One note on that, this is kind of a nightmare version of this. So one last tie back to Lesbian Western is when I first came to LA, a roommate of mine said, oh, you're in the industry? He goes, I have a friend who's trying to get this pilot done and they need a director. And he goes, do you have anything you could send me? And I said, well, I don't have a reel or anything. I'm like, I can send you my exploitation genre project and you could have them see it. And I was like, well, they're either really gonna love it or they're really gonna hate it. And they were like, yes, please, you. So I got to direct a pilot because the Lesbian Western project. And so we're in the middle of this week-long shoot. We're late. We're doing a company move from location 1 to location 2. And this sound guy goes MIA. And they just didn't show up again because they were mad about something. The lunch was late or whatever. So we had all the footage from the previous days. We had all the previous the sounds that had been dumped earlier that day, but everything that hadn't been dumped yet, we lost. And that was a really valuable lesson for me because I'm like, oh, I came in, I'm just director for hire. I did not set this up, I did not hire the crew, I did not do anything. I'm just like, what are we doing today? I was like, I'm never gonna have that happen on one of my sets. Because now it's, well, do we have sound gear? Because if you have a boom pole, someone can hold it. That's not a hard job. You just need to make sure the levels are good. But if you don't, well, now we're shut down. Again, part of that is getting organized in pre-production so your production goes well. So then when you go to post, you don't go, oh, I forgot, day 4, we don't have half the sound. because you might be able to fix that in post, but it might be really expensive and take a lot of time. So I want to make sure we move on. And I will be stopping for questions here when we come back. So next, Radimir, if you could play the El Cap wedding trailer, please. Which Jeff here shot. He's the DP.
Yeah, we're all gonna be badasses by the end of this. I just thought that was the coolest thing. You know, who gets married on a ledge?
I wasn't into fitness at all. I never done that, so I didn't register to my mind what that is.
Say hi.
Hey guys!
I know if that works.
So to say that you're training for a wedding, A, makes people kind of wonder what this wedding's going to entail, and they realize, oh, you might die on a wedding day.
It was actually really fun planning the outfits as well. I worked with my friend Jacoby, who's a brilliant designer.
We knew from the beginning that it would be leggings and some sort of a train.
Shane and Joyce's was the first marriage I had ever heard of being performed up on a ledge. And to be down here in the meadow, we were all cheering them on. It was just a completely awesome experience.
Well, Molly is my maid of honor. She's actually afraid of heights.
The people involved didn't want something to just go through the motions.
For the most part, climbing requires a climber and a belayer. It's nice to have someone to fall back on and someone who's there to catch you when you fall.
So thank you, Jeff, for shooting that. Thank you, Joyce, for saying yes. If any of you want to see that and you haven't, it's at lcapwedding.com. Next, we're going to talk about roles a little bit. You'll notice the theme, everything's done in threes, because thrice is nice. So we talked about pre-production, production, and post. I talked about being a climber, creator, and a coach. Now we're going to talk about writing, directing, and producing. Both Turbines and El Cap Wedding is a good example of me having to shuffle through and have the perspective of each one of those roles. Now, if you've done a documentary, you know it's really hard to write a script because you never know what's going to happen. You kind of have to just write an outline and be like, well, here's what we're going to shoot, and we'll see what happens when we shoot those things, and then we can kind of edit it in post. But you still have to come in with having a clear vision for the story, knowing who the characters are, what the locations are, what the conflict's going to be, or where the drama is, or what have you. And then you have to shift into the producing hat, which is, especially for something like this, and we joked about it, we're doing a wedding and a climbing trip and a movie. So how can we make sure that all the climbing equipment, the logistics of like going to Yosemite and how do people get there, you know, the food and water, and where are we going to go, and what do we need? How can people be fit enough? Make sure they have the skill sets. All the climbing stuff is handled. All the wedding stuff, the outfits, the invitations, you know, the non-invitations. You're basically eloping with friends at this point to Yosemite. Putting together the like we're getting married website, you know, all the wedding stuff. And then the film stuff. How are we logistically going to shoot this on a ledge, which was like 5 feet by 10 feet or something, 500 feet off the ground? I need someone who has a climbing background and has medic background and camera background. I only know one person who could do that. Hired. And then how do you get all three of those to work together? All of this is, of course, in pre-production. So then when you get to Yosemite, then you have to shift into directing mode and say, okay, I'm here guiding this expedition because I'm the guide, and I'm the groom, so I want to be in the moment for everything and remember my vows and like pay attention to all the like walking down the aisle, which for us was like ascending the rope. But I also need to be in my directing hat. So again, these three roles. So how can you do all that? Well, you have to be really organized. And you have to have, so Joyce is my producing partner, and we would literally have separate meetings. So like, okay, we're gonna sit down and talk about wedding stuff, and sometimes it's the next day, and sometimes it's just like, all right, we're gonna take a pee break, and we're gonna come back, and now we're in a production meeting. So same two people, same place, completely different roles. And you're shifting perspective and say, we're not worrying about all the things we just talked about, we're worrying about logistics for the film. And again, quite often when you're an indie person, you are all these things. And so you have to very clearly delineate between, nope, I'm this now. And how can I look at everything? Doesn't matter what I want as a director, what do I have to do as a producer? How can I yell at my director, which is me? You're not gonna get it, I don't care. You're like, I have to have it no matter what. And you go, okay, well, we could not do this. And then your wedding hat has to go on and go, well, we kind of need to do this. Once you can wrangle all those things, very similarly to pre-production, production, and post, you'll have a smooth transition at some point. It is helpful to make sure you have experience in each one of those things. So I always encourage everyone, I don't care if you're a writer or not, try and write some stuff. Write outlines, write scripts, break down scripts that you didn't write. That's all part of the writing part. Edit a script that you didn't write. You don't have to be a writer, but you have to be able to have that lens. Because a lot of times when you're on set, what's the director doing? The scene's not working, so you're kind of doing a spontaneous rewrite. Let's try this line a different way. Let's try a different line. Let's try, as Dale told me the other day, this story, let's take the line out. That's you writing. You're just not doing it on paper or on a screen. But if you don't have that writer's muscle, it's going to be very difficult. Some people are very married to the script. And there's a time and a place to just do what the script says. It's the blueprint. But there's also a time and a place to be like, we got to change it. The biggest thing for people that's difficult is the producer is basically the manager. And it doesn't matter what else it is. It could be a restaurant. Oh, you have great food, but it's not run well because they have a shitty manager. That restaurant's not going to last. Especially a long project. If you're shooting for a month, I mean, big features, they'll shoot 12, 16 weeks or more. If you were at Zach's screening last night, he talked about, oh, we started the production by going to Rome for a week. It's probably like him and the co-lead and the director, maybe the DP was there. So it's not like the entire film, but still. How are we gonna justify that probably really expensive week in Rome compared to the entire rest of the shoot? You can't really fake Rome. I mean, you can, but to go shoot there, that might be a great investment in the outcome. But again, as the producer, you have to weigh those things. And you have to know, because we're all going to pay a cost for everything. So it's which cost are you going to pay? Is the cost, I'm going to be really fit and disciplined, and I'm going to get up early, even if I don't want to, because I'm going and exercising or doing whatever? Or is the cost going to be, I'm not tired because I slept in? You're going to pay one cost or the other. Very similar in production. Which costs do we want to pay, and which ones can we not afford to pay? So sometimes, again, that's, we have to push 6 months because there's a strike. We want to do this well with good people or whatever. Sometimes it's, we have to do it now because we're going to lose the location. Okay, maybe we have to go indie or what have you. But if you aren't able to logistically look at this, then all you're doing is directing, then you need to get a producer. They can do all this for you, so you don't have to do it. But even if you're just the director, it is really helpful. Like I mentioned earlier, you need to know what those different departments need, and one of those departments is production itself. If all you're doing is being like, all I care is about getting the shots and the performances, you're probably gonna have a lot of fights before and after the day. And again, the longer the production goes on, the more difficult this is gonna be. And that's where people show up at 100 and they're super jumping up and down, they're all happy, and they leave at 0 and they're like, I never want to do this again. And a lot of people who have left production because they just don't want to do it anymore. It's too hard, even though they love it. So the more we can make this easier, it's never going to be easy. The more we can make this easier, the more we can learn from those lessons, the more we can figure out how to shift those perspectives and say, oh, I'm shifting into writing mode, I'm shifting into producing mode. Or to say, again, I'm not the director on this project, but what can I learn from this director who maybe is directing differently than I do? How can I learn from the producers? Try and either be a mentor or a mentee in every relationship. It's either what can I teach this person or what can I learn from this person, or both. And again, that's another hat to be able to switch back and forth. But if you aren't ever consciously thinking of roles, then you might miss out on some of those opportunities. And in the larger scope, we also want to think about how are you putting yourself out to the industry? on one hand, being a multi-hyphenate can be great, and it's kind of in vogue. People are like, you know, they're a rapper, director, choreographer, you know, dancer, whatever. On the other hand, like when I started 10 or 20 years ago, a lot of it was like, oh, you have to have separate cards. Because you're either telling me like, oh, I can do sound, and it says writer, director, producer, sound, DP, you know, stunts, whatever. And they're, well, some people look at that and go, awesome, I can put you in anywhere, you're a great utility player. And other people will be like, well, if you're good at all these, you're not good at any of those, and I'm not gonna hire you. So some of that's the perspective of the person that you're presenting yourself to, but some of it is, again, very mindfully choosing to say, how am I putting myself out there, and in what role do I want to showcase myself? Or say, well, my specialty is this, but I also could do these things. And a lot of actors will say, and actually Dale and I did an interview for my show, yes, I can roller skate. Fuck, now I gotta figure out how to roller skate. And that is great. That can-do attitude is excellent. And again, I grew up in the film world in Australia, where a lot of it was, you're the sound guy today. I've never done sound before. Okay, take them over there, 10 minutes. Now, at the end of the day, you'll have 15 hours of experience. Excellent. You just have to be willing to do that. But again, you have to be very honest with yourself and say, do I want to do that again? If we open ourselves up to new roles, we can accidentally discover something that we go, oh, if I just missed this, I would have missed out on being a sound person. I love sound. I had people at film school who went into the writing, directing, producing program and came out as, I want to be a sound person. Or go into the cinematography program and after the first year, switch into the writing, directing, producing. But they had to do it enough to realize this is for me or it's not. So figuring out what roles you want to be, how to be able to shift between perspectives sometimes, and especially project to project, is really important. And the more you can start to have these things come together, because again, if you're an indie person and you're like, I'm the producer on that project, and meanwhile, I'm writing my own script. I need to be in, which role am I in right now? Because I'm doing both, but I can't be in both at the same time. And you can't really wear two hats. Which one are you putting on? Which one are you taking off? Now, I kept saying we're going to have some question time, so before we get to the very end, does anybody have any thoughts? I know we talked about a lot of things so far. We're kind of going rapid fire through all this because I want to try and fit a lot in before we get to the short film. So anything from anyone before we move on to the next trailer? Okay, we are going to have some Q&A time at the end as well, so we can always do that. So Radomir, if you can play the Climb On trailer, please. And I keep running back because it's nice to see this on the big screen. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. Tune in on the next episode to see the second half of the Content Creator Panel. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to support the show, please click on the link below. You can also contact me at my website if you have any questions about filmmaking or anything else. Off to the side, you'll see a couple of my books, Film Notes and the Film Notes Workbook. I encourage you to check those out if you'd like to learn more about filmmaking. See you in the next episode.
Scene 1, Apple, take 1.